Hello and welcome to Unprofessional Engineering. My name is James.
You got Luke.
Luke, today we're continuing on our What is Mechanical Engineering series with What is Electrical Engineering?
I feel like you said that wrong.
What is electrical engineering?
Is it? It's not within mechanical engineering.
No, but we did one on what is mechanical engineering, and we actually increased the number of people joining the mechanical engineering profession by a significant amount.
I hope by the end of this show we decrease the number of people.
I only know a handful of electrical engineers, and they're all the worst.
They're terrible.
They're terrible. What is electrical engineering?
Electrical engineering is someone who designs and develops
An electrical engineer is someone who
designs and develops new electrical systems, solve problems, and test equipment. They study and apply physics and mathematics of electricity, electromagnetism, and electronics to both large and small-scale systems to process information and transmit energy.
Fun fact for you, Luke. You ready for this?
Shoot.
Starting out fast. Electrical engineering wasn't really a thing back in the day of George Ohm, who discovered the relationship between electric current and the difference in a conductor.
The Ohm is named after him.
Right?
I get it.
Or Michael Faraday, who discovered electromagnetic induction. You know who gets credit for that?
Who's that?
Mechanical engineers, because they're the best.
We're kind of better than most people.
Yeah. I have a brief history on electrical engineering. Would you like it?
I'd love to hear it. I understand that before there was electricity, this didn't exist. Is that accurate, James?
Thanks, Luke. That was really well said. And that is the brief history of electrical engineering.
No. Let's hear your detailed version. I'd be so good at writing cliff notes.
You really would.
I'd be amazing at it. I'm sorry. Let's hear the details.
All right. Electrical engineering became a profession in the later 19th century. Practitioners had created a global electric telegraph network, and the first professional electrical engineering institutions were then founded in the United Kingdom and the United States because of this. So the electric telegraph really kind of pushed this forward.
I feel like that was a Wikipedia copy-paste, because I'm pretty sure I read that exact same thing.
This was not from Wikipedia. It was from some other webpage that probably took it from Wikipedia.
Okay, gotcha.
So I guess in that case it would be from Wikipedia.
Okay.
Francis Rollins, who created the first working electric telegraph system in 1816, is often considered the first electrical engineer.
That was one of my fun facts. You just stole it.
I'm sorry. I'm sure you have a lot more, though,
No,
right?
I don't, actually.
It took over 50 years, though, from then, when he joined the Society of Telegraph Engineers, which was soon renamed the Institute of Electrical Engineers, where he was regarded as like their first member, like their top member. He was the top dog. All right, so then, now we're getting into the universities that actually kicked it off. I don't know how to say this, but I'm going to try. The Technische Universität Darmstadt.
Nailed it.
Founded the world's first Department of Electrical Engineering in 1882. The first electrical engineering degree program was started at, of course, MIT, because why wouldn't that be the case?
Yeah.
Did I steal a fun fact from you?
No.
And it was started in the physics department under Professor Charles Cross, though it was Cornell University who produced the first electrical engineering graduates in 1885.
That's interesting.
A lot of good schools up there. I don't know about that first one with all those funny like symbols over the letters, and I think it was
Do we
Germany.
want to talk about schools for a second? Because I got some info on schools. Or do we want to save that?
Oh, one more. Well, yeah, let's talk about schools if you want. I feel like that's a good lead.
So I got the top 3 and then an honorable mention for schools.
Is that for undergrad?
Yes, this is undergrad. This is
Okay.
not graduate, because who goes to graduate school?
Actually, I tried to break them out as different lists, and they were basically the same schools. So go ahead.
So number 1, you mentioned it already. MIT, Massachusetts.
Wow, that was well done.
Massachusetts Institute of Technology. They cost you $51,832 for tuition and fees per year.
And I'm going to put this out there. We have been there. We're basically graduates there.
I think we got honorary
doctorates.
We got honorable. I don't know.
We're honorable.
So
$52K a year.
So to graduate from MIT as an electrical engineer, it's going to cost you about $200,000. bananas.
If you can make it in 4 years. But I guess if you're at MIT, you
I'm
can.
sorry, 4 years. You're right. Wow. So, University of California, Berkeley. So if you are out, so this is actually the best one cost-wise. If you are an out-of-state student, it's only going to cost you $43,000.
If you're in-state.
If you're an in-state, they basically give it to you for free. It's $14,000.
How
if
is
you're
that
in-state.
a thing? That's
Like,
so low.
So I wonder if there's like a time limit where you like. If you could move to California, be there for 12 months, and maybe one of our listeners will know. So maybe if you're there for like a year, you could like send your kids to school there because California does a great job with the way their tuition.
I think it would be like your official residency, right, or residence.
But you might have to do it for a
location.
certain amount of time, perhaps.
Probably.
Next up is Stanford.
51?
This is 51 plus tuition and fees. So this is crazy just to think that this is going to be. I can't believe they spend that much to get these degrees at these schools.
Glad I don't have any kids.
Exactly. An honorable mention coming in 9th place is our very own not alma mater.
Local school.
I'm going to say alma mater. Is Carnegie
How
Mellon
can you
University.
even make that claim?
I don't know. Eventually someone will believe it.
right.
Crazy enough, it's number 9 on the list.
I was surprised about that.
But it's $55K. It's the most expensive.
So many smackers. That's so
Yeah.
much. Georgia Tech was pretty reasonable. Number 4, $33K or
that's not bad.
$12K in-state. Illinois, I have a friend who went there for his master's degree in EE. It's $32. And then Caltech, Michigan, Cornell, and Purdue.
Yeah,
are
they're all
up there. And that, like I said, like for that's undergrad, but for grad school, it's all pretty much the same list.
And the thing that I read was when you're doing graduate work, you're pretty much only doing research because you don't need the graduate degree to work in the typical electrical engineering fields that we just described. And we're going to go into some types of work you do. But typically, if you're going to go get your master's degree in electrical engineering, you're typically doing research or like super cutting edge stuff. But like day-to-day double E's, you don't really need it. Just saying.
See, I've always thought that too about mechanical because our good friend Mike Smell has his master's in mechanical engineering.
What's he doing
And,
with it?
well, exactly. I mean, he just has the same kind of gig we do. And I
Yeah.
always was confused why he went back for that. And I think it was because he's actually interested in engineering, which is just terrible. But I would think you'd go for an MBA or something if
Yeah.
you have your engineering.
And you're already kind of out
undergrad.
of engineering, doing businessy kind
Right.
of stuff.
Yeah, to get at least if you're not going into research like you're saying
Yeah.
and you're in the real world, then I would think that would probably be getting you ahead further.
I just couldn't imagine spending that much money and then not using it. That's crazy.
I don't use my engineering degree
yeah,
at
I
all.
know, but you don't have a master's on top of it that you're also not
Oh,
using.
my goodness.
Could you imagine how frustrated you would be if you did that?
My brother has a master's and he is no smarter than anyone else.
Wow.
And he doesn't make any money. He's
No-
poor. He's homeless.
There's
That's
no
not
love
true.
there.
That's not true.
I like your brother.
I do too. I think he's pretty good.
I met him at your nuptials.
Yeah, you did.
He
Those were good
sang at
times.
your nuptials.
He's pretty good.
Was
He's very
amazing.
creative. See,
Super
again,
creative.
shouldn't have been an engineer.
Yeah.
All right, before we move on, let's take a break for this week's sponsor.
I'm assuming it's Massachusetts Institute of Technology.
Well, this is when we're actually announcing our honorary PhD
Program.
from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. So,
How do you say Massachusetts?
Massachusetts? Massachusetts?
So
All
no
right.
sponsor.
No sponsor as per usual, but we have a bunch of shout outs.
Ooh, I love
Charles M. might get on an episode with us
Ooh.
and talk about, I like this one, government
How
conspiracies.
come I don't get to pre-approve these people? They just call you.
Well, that's because you don't do anything other than this. I do all the other work.
Yeah, you do.
That's the problem. If you want to start doing it. Yeah. Aaron H. I think conspiracies would be awesome.
would be.
Area 51 and all that jazz. Aaron H. is a Wisconsin Stout ME student.
Hey, dog. Nice.
Yeah, first robotics mentor and listens to us on his drives. It's amazing how many people listen to us when they drive. I would think my sweet voice would put them to sleep. No.
I would think I'd want to take that car and
Ram
drive
it into a
off
pole.
cliff.
Kevin B. is leading up our Irish fan base in
Oh,
Toronto.
I love it.
We're getting really specific now. Remember when it used to be that we'd have the one person in Ireland? Now we have a whole Irish group in Toronto.
I'm telling you.
We're pretty famous. And then last but not least, literally just saw this email like 2 minutes ago. Mike L. wants us to do an episode on Willis Carrier, the air conditioning guy. I never heard someone be so passionate, but he really likes this guy, and he would recommend the short biography, Willis Carrier, the father of air conditioning.
I feel like that could be interesting. There's a ton of engineering. There's all kinds of science that happens with air conditioning. And imagine life without air conditioning.
Oh, my goodness. I've been there.
I'm a sweater, and I don't like to sweat. And usually whenever I sweat, there's usually
you
all
smell
kinds
bad,
of like
too.
problems that happen with odor. So
When I was in Cuba not that long ago.
Cuba. That's the right way to say it.
No air conditioning.
Anywhere.
Wow. Well, some places.
You
Like
had
the
to
really
be
fancy
miserable.
buildings. Yeah, and it's so humid and just the worst. I don't leave the house very often. Anyways,
No, you don't.
thanks for writing in. If any of you want us to give you a shout out, send you some stickers, whatever, email us at unprofessionalengineering@gmail.com.
And you should be subscribing,
Oh,
liking, sharing, giving us reviews.
Subscribing, reviewing,
All of it.
liking,
All of it.
sharing on iTunes or wherever you listen.
Super
we are
famous.
up to 86 reviews. When we get 100, we're going to throw a big party for you and I
Nice.
with all the money we make.
It's going to be a big party.
All right, so let's move on. We were talking about the schools that you could go to. How about I give everyone, I'm guessing you don't know this, Luke, but an overview of the classwork that you might be going through to get your engineering degree.
I did not do that level of 11-page research.
I copied and
consolidated
pasted so much.
I consolidated mine to 1.5 pages.
I did so much copying and pasting. It's unbelievable. So your undergraduate coursework that you'd be looking at, you have your math and science requirements, and I think this is pretty similar for any engineering degree. Like when I was going for ME, it was like the first 2 years almost didn't matter. At least the first year of college didn't matter because it would all line me up for whatever engineering I was going to do.
And I really excelled at the maths and the sciences.
And the English and the colorblind test.
Yeah.
And you're really good at stuff.
Well, basically.
We didn't come up with you're the worst for no reason. That was mean. I'm
Okay,
sorry.
math and science.
Math and science. Differential and integral calculus. Chup, got those. Integration, differential equations. The worst class ever, in my opinion. Got those, though. Got a D for diploma in that one. What?
Nice.
I think it was a C, technically. Physics for engineering students. Physics 2 and first physics students. And these are usually just like your general physics and then your electronics and magnetisms kind of physics classes. Then you can have some electives, and you also need a probability and statistics class, which I also have. So I'd say that you could probably take any first year of engineering classes and cover those ones.
Anywhere.
Yeah, anywhere.
Gotcha.
General tech requirements, introduction to, and this is where it gets bad because I had EE 305, which was my one electrical engineering class. I failed a test so badly that the professor had myself and a few others come in and basically said, your Scantron must have been corrupt because your score was so low, had to retake the test.
That sounds like the scene from Billy Madison where he asks him the question, and at the end of Billy Madison answering the question, he's like, we are all now stupider having listened to you. May God have mercy on your soul,
Yes.
whatever that whole line was. That's kind of what that professor did to you.
Basically. He was like, you're so dumb that you need to retake this, and I'm going to pretend it wasn't your fault. So anyways, introduction to electrical engineering or engineering electives, concepts of mathematics, fundamentals of programming, not so bad. Introduction to electrical and computer engineering. And I find that the computer engineering and electrical engineering really are tied closely together. And that computer engineering is often considered just kind of like a subcategory of electrical engineering at this point, but I disagree with that. I know you can get a computer engineering degree, but a lot of places seem to lump them together.
Yeah, I think what's happening is folks that are considering electrical and the computer, they're doing more computer science.
Yeah, that's fair.
And actually, whenever I was doing some of the research about like starting pay and job satisfaction and job growth, they were saying that's probably one of the biggest problems is
too much comp sci.
There's not enough computer science.
Oh.
And what's happening is there's so much innovation happening in the computer science side of things where electrical, power's power,
Right.
A circuit's a circuit. So there's not a ton of innovation. So there's actually going to be a big uptick for EEs because people aren't going into that and they're doing computer science.
Huh, well, that's interesting. Maybe I should have been an EE. No.
Nope.
I would have never made it. I had a friend in college that was one.
Face.
You should have. Okay, so these ones are getting closer to actual EE work then. Introduction to computer systems, electronic devices and analog circuits, which sounds terrible. Structure and design of digital systems, signals and systems. Ugh, terrible. And then you can pick from things between different coursework of circuitry, hardware, software, more signals and systems classes. The fundamentals of electromagnetics sounds like a killer class.
Oh, goodness.
Semiconductors, microfabrication, nanobiophotoниcs. This just sounds terrible.
It sounds like you're speaking a different language right now.
I really might as well be. And then you get into some of the 400 level stuff. So this would be like your last year and a half of work. If you're me, maybe it would be your last 2 or 3 years of your 6-year degree.
Or if you're like me, it's like in your end of your second year because you're advanced.
You are advanced, that's true. Advanced digital signal processing, image and video processing, pattern recognition theory. Sounds terrible. What other 400s do we have in here? Introduction to computer architecture, and then just a whole bunch of other electives that you have to choose from. Then you can get into some very specific things. So once you're almost graduated, you'll have a number of 400 level courses, like your high level courses that you have to take, but then you can take some as electives as well. And they're starting to offer things like artificial intelligence, like representation and problem solving, and compiler design, and database systems. So all of these things in parallel computing, these are all a lot more niche and like kind of guiding you to be a better candidate for getting a job in a specific field that you're interested in.
I'm wondering where the class is for like collecting social media data is and compiling in an Excel spreadsheet with like electrical and mechanical engineering programs.
I could be a professor of that course right now. Like right now, I could teach that.
Or like for me, like where like the voiceover and video editing courses are for engineering.
Voiceover is an interesting one because if you go back and listen to our public speaking episode with Neil, that would be kind of along those lines, but still it's a completely different thing than presenting. But
it is.
Yeah. But I did have SolidWorks as a class practically. I had one that taught me IronCAD, which turns out that's a complete waste.
That sounds so cool.
Yeah. And then one that taught me how to use SolidWorks to design parts, and that was part of it while I was doing the equations as well, and that's the reason I got my first job.
Nice.
Yeah, so shout out to SolidWorks. Why don't we talk about jobs that we could get?
Yeah, so a couple things. Do we want to talk about pay and some things too, or are you going to save that?
Let's talk about pay, but before we do any of it, why don't we take a break for this week's Luke's Rant?
Okay, so here's my rant, and I got to throw MIT under the bus.
Oh, no, because of not supporting us?
Yeah, well, I mean that, but it's just... So why do you have to be so good at everything?
Except sports.
Except sports. Exactly. Now, I just feel like, number one, if you're that good of a school... I don't know. I feel like the fact that you have to pay and it's really not just MIT.
It's a sour grapes, Luke.
This is a little sour grapes, Luke. When you look at what it costs to go to school, so let's just say you went to one of the cheaper ones. Well, no, we'll say MIT because the math is easy. We're just gonna say it's 50 grand.
We're rounding down.
We're gonna say it's 50 grand a year. So that means you're gonna graduate with a minimum of $200,000 in debt. And you can go to...
and that's not like books and blah, 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 blah.
Or housing or anything.
Goodness.
So in reality, you're probably going to graduate with close to $300,000 in debt if you get an undergraduate degree for electrical engineering or mechanical, roughly. Just throwing that number out there, 250, 300 if you go to one of these big schools. But I can go to another school for 32, and I mean, do you really make that much more money when you show up at an interview and you got MIT? Maybe you do, but it's the same classes, you know. I just don't get the cost of college tuition in general, and I definitely don't agree everybody goes to school for free. That is a terrible idea. There's folks out there saying, oh, everybody goes to school for free, and it's like, yeah, who's going to pay for it? The taxpayers.
Some people shouldn't be going to school, you're saying?
I think some people need to look
You're a big trade school proponent.
I think
right? You love
people.
trade
I
school.
really think people should consider apprenticeships. I think people need to think about trade schools. I think folks that need to go to school and get 4-year degrees, they need to get 4-year degrees. I'm a huge Mike Rowe fan, and I love every talk he does about this huge gap that exists in what we need versus what people are being told by guidance counselors. And so I guess my real rant is guidance counselors.
Wow, we really
You know,
just took a turn.
My nephew, right?
I remember the nephew.
I've talked about the welder.
Yes.
He just bought his own. So he's 23 years old, just bought his own house. He's closing on it this coming Monday.
Congratulations.
And how many other kids that are 23? They're sitting in school, smoking pot, drinking beer, and then in one more year, they're going to graduate with $300,000 worth of debt, and they're going to have to move back in with mom or dad or have 12 roommates. Something's wrong. So
Wow.
the fact that he went to a trade school for 18 months or so and has a great career as a welder, is making great money, bought his own house, has 2 vehicles.
So take
you
that,
know.
guidance counselors.
Yeah,
that was
it just-
probably the most ranty rant you've had
I'm
in
sorry.
a long
It just-
time.
I'm-
No, that was
yeah,
good. There was some
it's-
passion in there. I
yeah.
liked it.
Trade schools, folks. Think about what you want to be when you grow up.
How much
and
did Duquesne cost a year?
It's expensive in
Yeah.
Pittsburgh.
Okay. Just thought I'd throw that
My
out
wife
there.
works there. I don't want to say.
All right. Let's talk about how much bank you're going to bring home when you get one of these degrees.
Yeah, so here's the problem. So like
Oh, this is
yeah, so
it's not good.
This is a bit of the problem. So like right now, you're going to come out of school, and this is average. So you're going to start probably on the low end at about $48K a year coming out with an electrical engineering degree. And the problem is $48K, you need money to pay your loans. Not to go back to my rant, but it take you forever to pay your loans back. So the pay is decent. I mean, it's not terrible, but it's $48K to start.
That's on the low end,
yeah.
averaging up to about
Yeah.
70.
So the average is actually 88. What I found, and the crazy thing is, mechanicals is only 77, and we just have different stats. I don't know if it's different years or maybe different data sources, but according to this, electricals on average make more than mechanicals.
They do. Absolutely, they do.
It gets more specialized, I think, for sure.
I think that's typically understood. I mean, to be fair, going back to the whole school thing, there was always like the pecking order of who you picked on, and it was always like the civil engineers were
Always
the
the
worst.
worst.
Like they were on the bottom.
Sorry, Trevor.
And industrial engineers were kind of in that mix, but there's such a small group that
Yeah.
you kind of don't even bother with them. Then it was kind of like mechanicals were in there next, and we could pick on all the civils. Fortunately, we're the biggest group, and civils are probably
Yeah.
next. But then there's like electrical and chemical, and so they could all pick on us.
Yeah, 'cause
and that
they're way
makes sense
smarter.
why they are way smarter and why they get paid more.
So any other stuff on pay? Because I got a few other things.
So I had a bunch of stats on pay. So I got mine from Glassdoor. So if you're looking for jobs or wondering how much you should be getting paid or unhappy at your job and think you should get paid more, go to Glassdoor and check it out. You can get reviews on different companies and how much you can make.
That felt like a sponsorship line.
I really should be
Wow.
getting money from them for that. So this was updated on February 17th of 2019. So just to give everyone some
okay,
perspective.
so your numbers are probably better than mine.
Well, about that, yeah. So when you're starting on average, it should be about 73,000. But like you said,
But that's not starting,
The
that's
low
average.
side is 50. The high side would be 100. But if you're starting at 100 out of school with an undergraduate
You
EE
need punched
degree,
in the face.
you will be punched by me.
Yeah.
I will find you.
Yeah.
If you go to the next level, like you have a few years experience, you're looking at about 85,000 average. If you're going up to the 10 years of experience almost, you're looking at 100,000 average, which I can live with that, but 144 on the high side. And then there's a little bit of like bonus money in there as well. And then if you're like at the 10 to 15, we're looking at like 112.
So I feel like they don't move a ton.
It doesn't seem to move a whole bunch. I mean, in 15 years you're making $50,000 more, $40,000 more. I mean, that's not bad, I guess.
And that's if you stay in your role. But if you're like us and you move into marketing, the money just starts like rolling in.
Or if you start a podcast where, like, I literally can't sleep at night because all of the lumps from the cash in my mattress just keep me awake from podcast money.
DuckTales.
Yeah. Woo.
So interesting thing about job satisfaction, though.
Oh, do
So I got-
tell.
So on a scale of 1 to 5, it's actually not a super satisfying job. They only get a 3.2. And my guess is it has to do a lot with just in any engineering job. So mechanicals are 3.1. So actually mechanicals are a little less satisfied than electricals.
Agree.
Totally agree with that. But I think the whole job satisfaction thing in engineering in general is, and you and I have both been here, we're making things, or we're not making things, we're designing things, we're working with other people's stuff. Very rarely are you a mechanical or electrical engineer where you come up with the idea, you design the idea, and then you make the idea, and you physically can like hold that thing in your hand and be like, oh, I'm so proud of this thing that I made. I mean, that does happen in very small circumstances, but the vast, vast majority, you're this little sliver, this little cog in this whole big engineering design wheel, and it's just not very satisfying.
You're really making this sound very appealing.
I'm sorry.
You're this little useless, replaceable
not
sliver.
Useless. You're totally required. Our whole episode about the Challenger thing is a perfect example.
That's a good point.
These guys made
the O-ring specialist,
right? This guy, and I mean, clearly, that was important and needed to be addressed, and they tried to do it. So check out our Challenger disaster episode where we interviewed the director of the movie.
That was cool.
It's super important, your job. But just the overall satisfaction, I think, is really tough to get with engineering jobs in general.
I think that might be one of the big reasons that people are like attracted to startups, and it's just such a big thing now that you're part of the whole process. You're coming up with that original idea. You're designing it. You're seeing the end product because you have to.
Exactly.
There's only so many people in your company. You have to wear so many hats then.
And you get to wear knit hats in the
and
summertime.
Have neck beards.
And have neck beards and wear flannel shirts and shop at secondhand clothing stores. That's the best part about working at a startup.
That's the only good part. Hey, a few subfields I wanted to talk about to give people a better understanding of what they're going to be doing.
Sorry, hipsters.
That's right. Power engineering deals with the generation, transmission, and distribution of electricity.
Power?
Yeah.
Power? Okay.
Yeah, of power. Power! No?
Gotcha.
All right, so transformers, generators, motors, things like that. Control engineering focuses on the modeling of a diverse range of dynamic systems for controllers, so electronic circuits and digital signal processors and microcontrollers and all those fun electrical things. Things that, wow, well said, Luke. Goodness, why aren't you doing this? Electronic engineering involves the design and testing of electronic circuits and components, so resistors and capacitors and all those things that you can't do because you can't see color.
Boring.
Yeah, it is really boring. I had a lab that we had to use those, and it just never clicked. Probably failed that too. Electronics engineering has to do with integrated circuits and microfabrication, semiconductors, and all that. Nanoelectronics is actually something that's growing now, so working with really, really small things. And this has only started in the early 2000s, so it's still not really a big field that people are getting into. Signal processing is the analysis and manipulation of
signals.
You nailed that. So this is both analog and digital still, which is kind of interesting. There's telecommunications engineering focused on transmission of information and communication, and then instrumentation engineering that deals with the design of devices that measure physical quantities like pressure and flow and temperature and things like that. So just because we say electronics, it doesn't necessarily mean electricity all the time. Yeah. You're working with different components and
I think if it was a different field, I could see there being a little more satisfaction maybe. But just the general field that you and I have interacted with, and it does seem a little bit boring. But a controls engineer
and Ananda's a boring EE.
Oh,
so
Ananda. He's the worst.
He really is the worst.
He is.
Shout out to Ananda.
Driving in his Tesla.
Right?
He lives.
Makes sense that he's an EE with a Tesla.
He lives in the state of Portland.
He lives in the state of Portland, getting hit by earthquakes all the time.
Can we talk about places you could possibly work?
I would love to
hear
that.
Stuff you do. So you kind of went through the types of work. We can come back to that, but places you could potentially work. So it's literally anywhere and everywhere. But I'm going to go through the list because
you can work
because
anywhere.
We need 2 more minutes of time. So aerospace, automotive, chemical, construction, defense, electronics, consumer goods, marine, materials, metals, oil, gas, pharmaceutical, power generation, rail, telecommunications, utilities. Rail. It's crazy.
It is crazy.
And then, let's say you don't want to do any of that stuff. Let's say you get your degree like us, and then you realize you're probably not really good at what you're doing as an electrical engineer in our case.
Yeah.
But you want to do something else, you could easily go into obviously become a man, because if you can't do the work, manage. You could move up and be a manager.
Working on it.
You could be a patent attorney, because to be a patent attorney, you need to know very specifically the ins and outs of electronics.
So then you have to go to law school afterwards?
Usually, yeah. So, like, let's say you wanted to be an attorney. You could be a patent attorney for mechanical engineering patents related.
Interesting. But not me, because I'm bad at that. But if you were good at it.
A friend of mine, Tony, is a patent engineer, and he is a chemist ahead of time. So he's a specialized patent engineer just for chemistry.
Probably gets
and
paid okay.
Oh, that's ridiculous. You could be a professor, again, if you can't do it, teach. Sorry, teachers.
Ouch.
And then you could obviously go into marketing. I mean, you could take the skills and things that you learned as an electrical engineer and work for a company that makes maybe electrical software. Maybe it's the firm itself that produces the products, and they need someone that has that authentic sound. They know what they're talking about when they're talking about stuff. And plus, it's fun to just stand on trade show floors.
Yeah,
sometimes.
it is not fun.
It's amazing.
So there's one more thing that I see written on your list that I would love for you to cover, and that's mostly because I want all the episode shout-outs.
Okay.
Famous electrical engineers.
Oh, yeah. So I got like 3 that you probably know, and then 2
if you
might
listen to
not
us, you
know.
should.
So the first one is good old Alex Belly Bells, Alexander Graham Bell.
Check out our episode on him.
The other one is my boy, Croatian sensation, Nikola Tesla.
Check out our episode on him.
And the other one is George Washington himself, Pittsburgh native. Am I making that up?
George Westinghouse.
George Westinghouse. I said Washington. Wow, at President's Day.
See, that's why you should have typed it out.
I'm recovering. Yeah, so George Westinghouse, who everybody knows Westinghouse Air Brake, Westinghouse Automotive.
Good old Wabco.
Or not automotive, electrical. They make TVs. Westinghouse does everything nowadays. All started with good old GW.
That's true.
And
not
then
Washington.
2, Washington, yeah, George Westinghouse. And then 2 famous, like, actor type folks. One is Ron Atkinson, a.k.a. Mr. Bean. That is crazy.
I know. And that I think that's well known that he's an EE, at least in the engineering
world. That
world.
doesn't surprise me, actually, now that I'm thinking about it, because if you think of all the engineers that you know, like the nerdiest and most awkward ones are a lot of times double E's.
Yeah.
So he's pretty good. And then Mike Bloomberg.
Really?
Yeah, that one really surprised me. He's I think he's the mayor of New York or the governor. He does something with New York.
Huh.
He's some kind of politician. I know the name. But yeah, he's also an electrical engineer.
All right,
Obviously not using his electrical degree.
It's cool that we can see that you can either become super famous by inventing stuff or just quit engineering and become a comedian or actor.
Or talk to pigeons and
or
die
talk
in
to
a hotel.
pigeons. Yeah. So you have a lot of good things in front of you if you choose to become an electrical engineer.
All kinds of directions
right?
you can go.
So anyone who's an EE that we just offended through all of this, feel free to write in and tell us what we got wrong or what you liked or what you think about electrical engineering.
And we will promptly delete those emails.
I'll read them. If they're real negative, I'll delete them because my feelings
Unless it's
get
about
hurt.
me.
Well, then I'll read it out loud. But hopefully you learned something about electrical engineering. I thought this was interesting, and I think we need to do one on civil so we can just make fun of them all the time.
We got to have T-Dog on.
Oh, we should do that. All right. Well, until next time.
See ya.